So Becca, when we were going back and forth a little bit about coming on the show, you said that you got some big thoughts and some big. We've gone through. We went through scene by scene practically with our Beyond the Barrier show, and but let's talk themes. Let's talk thoughts. Let's talk. What are some of there's so many things. I have to say so many things, and it's a weird feeling I have. And before I let you dive in, I want to start. I'm being very cautious to not overanalyze this show, like, because there's so much that I want to be like, well, if I look at this, that means that it took place at this point, and this was happening here, which means that this could happen. But I think as a Star Wars fan at the level that we tend to be, it's hard not to do that. So I'm really curious to see what sort of thinking you're going to throw into overdrive for me with some of your thoughts on the show.
Yeah, I'm trying not to overthink as well, but it's very hard. I actually laid out, it is. I actually laid out everything I wanted to talk about to my co-host via text, and he's like, oh my God. And I said, okay, here's all my evidence to back this up. And he's like, okay, we have to talk about this. I said, yeah, I know we'll get more in depth with it, but I don't even know where you want me to start, because
I have a place I want you to start. I have one.
Okay.
Pete and I are notoriously bad at books, but especially we are notoriously bad at the High Republic. And I know that there are strains of the great work and that kind of stuff. So I would love for you to give us, especially as we're talking about At Attin, is it Truman Show? Is it, whatever's going on, but how that connects certainly with, what from High Republic stuff.
Okay, so I am just going to start with At Attin as a place.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's this corporation that we got in Legends, but we got it in canon in the Phasma novel, 2017 by Dawson. It's called Constar Mining Corporation. Okay. That's what devastated Phasma's planet. And Constar has been around since over 100 years. They don't give the exact, over 100 years before Battle of Endor. So in the High Republic era, it's been around since then. And what they would do is they distributed mining facilities throughout the Republic on separate worlds, Parnosus being one of them. And what they would do is they would have these colonies, and they would mine precious treasure, which they refer to as ore. So it was like an eternal treasure known as this ore. So they would literally set up, ready for this? I want to make sure I got the right wording, because I made notes.
This is why we have Becca on, because she is, you're like a living Wikipedia. It's amazing.
They set up what's called defense grids, barriers, to protect the population and to protect from others coming in. Barriers, which is also very similar to what we hear in the High Republic, known as the occlusion zone, the OZ by the Nile, which put that up around so no one could get through without, disintegrating pretty much. So defense grids to me are kind of what came out of the occlusion zone to keep these mining facilities safe. And yes, they were very suburban type colonies, because if you go into the Phasma novel, when Phasma and her clan, before she becomes Phasma that we know of, finds this broken down Republic ship, which actually happens to be one of Emperor Palpatine's, because she builds her armor from it.
Right.
There's a mining simulator in there where they see these colonies and what happened, which was a nuclear leak, which is what happened to her world, why there was radiation and what happened to it. And that's why there was no more lush green anymore. So that connects with the stories that Fern tries to scare Wim with. The mining, how how there was like a gaseous leak and they all started to eat each other. So they got locked in. She's not really far off.
Right.
I know she's trying to scare him, but those stories did come from Parnosus. So, but it wasn't just Parnosus. There were other worlds that had these facilities. So At Attin could be one of them. And they were kept hush-hush. So you didn't know about them.
Right.
Wow.
Okay. So there's that.
Okay.
So I don't know where else you want me to go with that.
Talk about the great work. Obviously, we have these kids, taking the test, the assessment for jobs, which feels very Empire. It feels, those kids in those desks in that sterile room being taught by, a droid kind of felt like the shots we see in Andor of Cyril working in, you know, the cubicles and the desks and all of that.
Yep.
But they do specifically talk about the great work. And I know that there, you know, that's a part of some High Republic stuff as well.
It is. So let me find that note too, because I did take notes on that. The great work. Chancellor Lena So started the great works. It was plural, it wasn't just great work, it was great works. Basically, it was to have a bigger outreach to other worlds that weren't part of the Republic to bring them in. Hence Starlight Beacon. That was part of it. Valo, like the Valo Fair, all that. She tried to get others because they didn't at the time. The planet that housed or home was home of the Ahsoka species.
Oh yeah,
escaping me.
Togruta.
So yes, they were not part of the Republic back then, and they were trying to get them, and that was part of the whole reason to have the fair at Valo. So that's where that started. Basically, they would have a certain amount of people. Most of it was Jedi at the time, but those that were able to do the outreach to bring them in, and those that had, you know, higher IQs and talents for certain things to do this outreach and to bring these other people in based on all of that and their similarities, and to make basically to prosper in the economy. So yeah, that was part of it, which I thought that really made me like, holy crap, because
especially all the kids are learning about like finances and number matrices and all kinds of yeah.
And it's an assessment test, which I would equivalent to our SATs, something like that.
I almost took it like the what was the one that we had, the ASVAB, which was the like job readiness testing that we had to take growing up. And I thought that it was interesting in that, and it kind of, I think it will maybe develop more as it goes along. I rewatched
Emmy's onto something there, or Emmy's
part of the first one today.
What if they still think it's the High Republic? Yeah,
right.
Yep. And that's what I was going to say, because Undersecretary Farah, which I'll get to her in a minute too, she mentions that in the Republic, she doesn't say New Republic, she says the Republic. Even during the High Republic, they referred to it as the Republic. Right. So that says to me, at least in this bubble of a world, for whatever reason, I think the adults know where they are in the grand scheme of things of the timeline, but they're not telling the kids. We all know how this works. When you lie to the kids, it usually backfires.
It's gonna
you know, I mean, Anakin, Ben Solo, oh my God, Osha. I mean, you know, it isn't going to go very well. You lying to these kids.
That's right. It has a little bit of an Ender's Game vibe to it.
Yes. Oh, and I like that. Yes, that was really good. So there is a lot going on there. Also, the mosaic in Fern, because Farah is Fern's mom, which we talked about that a little bit. So they have a mosaic in their house, and I took pictures, which I could send to you guys. But if you look at it, it's got a woman, which I would probably put as someone of ancestral lineage to Farah. Then there's someone that looks a lot like Wim's dad. And then there is someone that looks like the same species as Neil, and they're holding a shovel, hence mining. And then there's an Athorian. So I'm thinking those are all the main species on this world, and probably the first settlers of that colony. And I think the whole place, like if you look at that, the symbol above the woman, it's very similar in the section out. There's like stars coming out of it, lines, and almost like a map. But on the inside, it looks almost like the old retro Atari symbol.
Oh, wow. Cool.
It really does. But it's the same symbol on the patch that she hands to Fern and says, here, you have your top class pin back, or whatever, her top class. And it's the same symbol on there. Okay. So which leads to me that it's a succession thing, that she's next in line to lead this colony, where I don't think Fern wants anything to do with it. But she also says there's not a place for everyone, though she just said in the class, there's a place for everyone.
Right.
But she told Fern there's not a place for everyone at the top.
It's like the line in Caddyshack, the world needs ditch diggers. Right. So
right, you know. So there's something really weird going on. I know Star Wars Meg put out
I saw this.
Farah was a name of she said an undersecretary, which is not right. Undersecretary in Shadowfall of Alphabet Squadron, which is the second book. And Farah, yes, was arrested by Hera Syndulla, but Farah is described in that book to have very dark skin.
Okay.
This Farah does not, and the Farah in that book was an aide to the undersecretary of the planet Troith. So there is some differences. Same name, I get it. But also, Alphabet Squadron takes place immediately after Endor.
Right.
If we're 5 years or more out, I don't see how. Plus, I'm just thinking of the description of the individual.
Right. Right.
So
interesting. Wow.
It is. I mean, there's a lot going on. Do I think the kids are in the dark? Absolutely. They're going to figure it out. I think that's part of the reason why Wim's dad is very alarmed that they're gone. I also think not everybody knows what Farah knows. There was one thing that really stuck out to me was the whole. Are we only talking about episode 1 or episode 2?
We can talk about both episodes. Yeah. Sure.
Okay. So Fern gets really insulted when SM33 refers to them as pirates, so upset over it. And I'm thinking, if these kids think they're in the wrong timeline, they're going to associate the term pirate with Nile and be really upset with that and really afraid.
Yeah.
And really afraid. So that's an interesting thing to think about because that spaceport was around during the Nile days.
Right. And it's on the Hydean Way, right? Which is right near Mandalore and other planets that we've seen recently. And I see, here's the really cool thing. This is why Star Wars is so great, and we need to just let it accept it at whatever level you want to take it at, because again, my first watch was just cool. This is fun. This is just something to it's a kid's show. This is great. And this conversation now, I'm going to have to watch it again this weekend, which I was going to do anyway. And I'm going to be picking up all this stuff. And so how much do you think of the story is growing the Mandoverse? And we'll kind of come to a conclusion in our conversation here with this. How much of the story is related to Mandoverse other than the timeline? And do you think it's going to feed into that lore and build up those stories as well? Or do you feel like this show is going to just kind of be more self-contained with Easter eggs all over the place like we're seeing here as well?
I definitely think it will play a part. You're not going to bring all these pirates in that we've seen in Mandalorian for no reason. I think there'll be a part in it also because I have watched quite a few of the interviews, and both the writers said that they're most looking forward to what the audience thinks by the end of the season, because everything has consequences.
Yeah.
So, and that's how they kind of left it. So this will play. I mean, everything leaves a ripple, right? It is Star Wars. It's kind of all connected to some degree. So I'm thinking this will leave a mark, and I wouldn't be shocked if we see like at least one of them again somewhere. I don't know how, but it's interesting because I love the whole basically living out, or at least living the dream of trying to become a Jedi. And that reminds me so much of Bail, in a sense, Bail Organa, because he was such a big advocate when the Empire rose, where he really wanted to clear the Jedi name. It was he wanted people to remember that the Jedi were the good guys.
Right.
He didn't want people to believe what Emperor Palpatine was saying. So I like the fact that Wim is trying to keep that alive, you see him playing with his action figures, and I was just like, oh my God.
And reading Jedi stories and
reading Jedi stories and playing lightsaber at the bus stop. Come on, you guys did that. I know I did that.
Yes. Flashlights, wrapping paper, whatever I had.
Whatever you could get your hands on. Absolutely.
That's it. Well, and I thought about this because I saw somewhere it just showed up in a social media feed or something, but it was one of the old teaser clips for the show. And the thing that intrigues me, talking about, this Mandoverse, Pete, like you said, where does it connect? Who's, going to bleed into that somehow? There's a shot where you've got Wendell and Farah standing at that window talking to each other, and there's that desperation of like, we have to help, we have to go get them. So it can be this story about kids lost in space, but also, are these adults going to be potentially unspooling that thread, just like M says about, what is the conspiracy of the planet? But it also begs the question, who are they going to call and say, hey, we need you to help us go find our kids? Is it going to be a Carson Teva? Is it going to be a Hondo? Like, there's any number of ways that this could go in this time frame, in this period, to make that connection and then allow those stories to then spin out from there. It could go a million places, and I can't wait to just enjoy it. I think, like we said, you hit on it early on, Becca, being transported back to being a kid. When I watched these first 2 episodes, it was very unlike most of the time when I watch shows. I wasn't distracted. I wasn't messing with my phone. I wasn't getting up to do something. Like, I was in. The hook set in early, and I just watched it, and I was like, oh, it's over now. And then, the second one was even shorter, which was disappointing. But it did take me back to kind of that childlike wonder feel of, wow, this is fun. And I think that's what I'm so excited to keep chasing as we watch these next episodes over the coming weeks, to just go, this is fun, and let's see what we get out of it.
Yep, absolutely. Good. Well, Becca, we have taken up more time than we asked for, and we really appreciate you hanging out with us. You're welcome anytime to come and talk Skeleton Crew, or whatever. I say this every time Becca's on the show, and I hope she takes it in the right way. But one of my favorite things about Tarkin's Top Shelf, there's only a handful of podcasts that I literally subscribe to and listen to in the Star Wars world, if for no other reason, because I just don't want to do other shows. But I love Tarkin's Top Shelf because I will never do their show because they read all the books. And the great thing about it is you guys let you know when there's spoilers coming. And I'm like, no, I'm here for the spoilers. Give me the whole. And that's how I get a lot of my Star Wars stories. So, and you and Mark are just great to listen to. And if you enjoyed the 25 minutes she was with us, taking these deep dives and pointing out things here and there, and that's what Tarkin's Top Shelf is all about. So please check them out, even if you don't read the books. And I imagine if I actually read the books, I would love the show even more, because you're going into things that I would have read. So, but really, honestly, and I'm not just saying it because you're a good friend and you've been great with us with Podathon and just been great on the show with us. It's one of those podcasts. If you're a Star Wars fan, you got to check it out. So please do that.
Thanks, guys. And for those of you out there that are Acolyte fans, don't be discouraged. Skeleton Crew has got some beautiful High Republic nuggets in there. Just don't lose hope. Got to keep hope.
Absolutely.
Keep hope alive. Awesome.
Yep.
Well, Becca, thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who's hanging out with us. Stick with us. We got the news coming up next, but we'll be back with more ATG Live.